I just wanted to answer the questions that I got from my Ask Me Anything on Reddit and Facebook. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about my survival strategies, what I think about survival, what I actually did out there in terms of strategy, a little bit about some topics about alone. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my book, a little bit about water, the tools I brought, my shelter, medical checks, fasting, food, the food I had out there, my fire, my thoughts on fire, how was my reintegration coming back, and then about the experience of winning. The first question the most asked question has been, did you propose to Jennifer? And yes, I did propose. We went to a spot that is very special for her, and it was Christmas Eve. And then I proposed and I gave her a ring, and she said yes. So it was pretty exciting. It was something that it was due, that and everything came together. So that was very nice. I've read lots of comments. There's many like negative comments in Facebook, and social media in general. But most of them have been positive. I read this comment says, unless you knew rescue was coming in a specific time frame, hunkering down is a death sentence and it's not surviving. And my response is like, survival is not all active. In my book I read about this like concept, it's not my concept, but about active passiveness. It's a balance, like everything in nature is cyclical, and there's all these opposing forces, and there's this active and there's this passive component. And in survival, you really need to read the situation to decide what your main strategy is going to be, if you want to be mainly passive or active, and that's on an hour-to-hour basis, on a day-to-day basis, and on a weekly basis. Like, it's ongoing, but it's definitely a spectrum, and you need to be in both areas. If one dominates, if you're only passive, you're gonna have a hard time. If you're only active, you're also gonna have a hard time. So it's a sweet balance. A question that I get asked often is, what would you do differently? And one of the things that I would do differently is I would try to be less afraid of losing my arrows. I went in with 9 arrows and got back to civilization with 9 arrows. My past experiences made me be very careful with my arrows and not losing them. But I think for alone, I should have been a little bit more, just less afraid of losing them. I think I could have attempted to hunt a muskrat, even though there weren't many good moments for that. But I think maybe if I was less averse to losing arrows, maybe I would have tried to hunt a muskrat. I think I could have focused on snaring a fox. That's something I would do differently. So one of the mean comments I got is, JP wrote the script that will ruin the show for me. Become obese, then build a low effort shelter and starve your way to the finish line. No, I did not write any script. People might attempt some of the things that I did, but I don't see really the competition changing just because I did things one way. So here's another comment, and this one's interesting for me. What are the contestants doing wrong that the First Nations did right? And alone, you can't just look at what we do on alone and think, oh, like modern humans suck at wilderness survival and they can't survive out there for long. And the truth is that no, we can. We obviously don't have that. We're not as in tune to the wilderness as our ancestors were, but that doesn't matter. We're still hunter-gatherers. The problem is that alone is about being alone. It's just one person. And the more north you are, the more important it is to be in a tribe, because food is more cyclical because of the seasons. We're social creatures. We need to be with other people in order to survive, because you just need lots of help. Being by yourself is not sustainable. Not sustainable. You need a community, and that's what the First Nations did right. They had communities. If you're by yourself, that's really, really hard to survive, and especially in like a place where and following the restrictions that we have to follow because of hunting and fishing, trapping regulations. Here's another comment. JP said he was in a survival situation. In a survival situation, you don't drink dirty water, not light a fire for 60 plus days, and say, I'm laying in my half-assed shelter and not moving or eating until everyone else quits. In a survival situation, you at least try. So I just want to say that in a survival situation, you have to assess if you're gonna drink dirty water or not. If you have easy means to treat water, then very likely that's the choice to do. But if you don't, if you're in a desert area, something like that, you might have to drink dirty water. Water is extremely important for all bodily functions. So it's a risk. You might get sick, but if you don't drink water, you'll get pretty sick right away. So the fire thing is, again, if you don't have means to make a fire, or you don't need to make a fire. For example, the Andes survivors that crashed, they did not have many materials for a fire. So blah, blah, blah. I'm not gonna answer that. So here's an interesting comment. Why did I decide to go with no fire and fast, knowing someone could have hunted a bear and lasted 80 to 100 days? So yeah, that was exactly what was going through my mind. I thought maybe someone hunted a bear, and by the last weeks out there, it was really cold, and I knew that the possibility of getting a bear was just getting really, really low. So I had to change my strategy. Instead of depending on a bear to survive, I just thought maybe I'm gonna get some ideas later on. Maybe I might be able to ice fish later on. With the things that I had, I thought that the best approach was to try to conserve my energy as much as possible, because getting a squirrel here and there when I'm like actively hunting and trapping, that wouldn't make a lot of sense calorie wise for me. So here's a question: how did you come up with your strategy? So I did not have any strategy going in. I know that it's super important when you're going into a challenge like this. You should have kind of like a rough plan of what you're gonna do, how you're gonna get food. At the end of the day, the plan just dies that first day, and I just improvised. I had no plan. I knew of all these strategies because of my research, because of my past experiences. So I could just like improvise based on those things on the fly. Have I watched all the seasons of Alone? Yes, I watch all the seasons of Alone, and I really enjoy the show. I really like it. I'm always trying to see what people build and their strategies for their shelters and everything. I try to learn as much as I can from the show. Is there anything you wish the editors had shown? I wish they had shown my shelter on those last days, because I piled up a lot of snow. There was a lot of snow all around the shelter, so up to basically where I slept, it was completely insulated. And I know that heat escapes upwards, but just because it was not as cold as it was gonna get that winter, we really just barely started to get into December, so it was still not very cold. And my thoughts behind that was, it's better to insulate a little bit while you are in the cold, just because you produce heat. When it's really, really cold, it's nice to have a few activities where you can warm up in the mornings. So that was something easy that I could do every morning, is just put a little bit more insulation in my shelter and do kind of like a hybrid Quincy. How hard was alone compared to your previous experiences? It's very hard to compare. I really think it's like apples and oranges. I've had many different experiences. I've hiked the Pacific Crest Trail in 99 days, paddle long remote trips. I did the 6 months in the bush with my partner and rations, and I did 100 days with rations in the winter. So all these experiences, they're all been hard in different ways. But yeah, alone was very hard. But it's so hard to compare, really. I can't. Was I happy with the edit, the way the show was edited? Yeah, I'm happy the way it was edited. I know it's not in my control, and that's fine. It was good enough for me, for sure. And it was really nice to see the end of it. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. So one thing that I wish the editors had shown is me eating the whistle, because I think a few people think that I did not eat the whistle, and I did, and it tastes pretty good. Surprisingly, I thought maybe I had messed up with the skinning, and maybe the meat would taste a little bit weird, but it did not. It tastes very good. And did you ever think about tapping out? I was just so invested into these, so much energy, time, heart. I was just so committed that no, it never passed my mind. I had thought about strategies to deal with that, but never even considered it. So what was the hardest part, or the hardest day? One of the hardest days for me was the first day. The first day is always hard because you get launched into a different experience. It's quite a shock. I thought that I was gonna put too much into this experience, that once I passed that checkpoint of like, I'm in, that was tough, because I was thinking about what I was gonna put my mind and body through. So yeah, the first day was tough. No like actual experience or day stands out to be like, oh, this was the hardest day for me, other than the first day. And yeah, people ask like, what was the hardest part of that? No, it's like there's so many things. It's the solitude, it's the weather, it's the starvation, the fact that I can't freely walk wherever I want. All these things, there's just so many things that like slowly grind you away. But I can't say, oh, this was hands down the hardest thing for me. Were there any fun moments that were not shown, even if you didn't film them? There was a pretty funny moment when I was getting some water from a hole I had in the ice, and it was at night. I didn't have my camera, on my forehead or anything like that. So I was gonna go grab some water, and I scooped a little bit of snow out of the hole because there was some snow covering it. And I had my headlamp, and as soon as I scooped the snow, these like I just an animal came up from the hole, and it scared the shit out of me. And also that animal was so scared of me too. So it was pretty funny because we just like met each other. The animal was underneath the water, I was out, and we just saw each other quickly, and then just parted ways. We both got like scared, like what the hell is that? That was pretty funny. I wish I had filmed that, and I believe it was a muskrat because of the size. It was such a fast encounter that I couldn't even see what it was. But another cool time that I wish I had captured on film was I was peeing by a tree, and an eagle landed, a young eagle. It was brown, and it landed really close to me, like super, super close. I could have touched it with a stick, basically. And it didn't see me because I was not moving at all, and that was pretty neat. I just stopped, I did not move, and just enjoyed the moment, and then the eagle went away. How much of the territory did you explore? So the first 2 days, I went like crazy up and down my shore, from the limit of my territory to the other limit, to explore the best area for a campsite. I knew that I wanted something that was close to the water relatively, because I knew that I had to go get water all the time. So it's important in a situation like that where you don't have much water, like your pot is so small. It's good to be closer to water, but it's a balance because you don't want to disturb the trails and let all the animals know that you're around, but at the same time, you don't want to be too far away from the water. Then the first few days, there was a big tree that I climbed up to the, like really close to the top, and just with my camera tried to see with the zoom, see all the area around. And I saw that there was basically a hill to the back of my territory. So that meant that I would have to burn lots of calories to go up and down the hill to the other side every time I wanted to explore the area. So I did not explore deep into the territory as much because it was very hard to walk. I did not think that it was worth it to be walking around trying to encounter a bear, which was basically the only large animal that we could hunt. I thought if we could hunt a bear, it would have to be more of an ambush kind of hunt rather than the bear comes to me rather than I go to the bear kind of thing. So someone asked me, what was the process you went to write your book? And this is my book, Thrive. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble in the States. The process I went to write this book was, I read a lot of books to prepare for my 6 months in the wilderness with my partner, and I did not find anything that was explicitly about long-term wilderness survival and that was like comprehensive enough. When I was out there for the 6 months, I just started to take some notes that I learned, and just in the back of my mind, I had this idea, maybe I write a book. And then I read a lot of books again to prepare for my 100-day winter trip. And during that trip, I took lots of notes, and I started to think about an outline for the book. Once I got back from my winter trip, I started really focusing on writing the book, and the first thing I did is I read lots of books that were related to long-term wilderness survival, hundreds of books. Some of them I just skimmed, and I took notes. I took notes of the illustrations in the book. I think I spent maybe 18 months, more than 18 months writing the book. Then I went on alone. When I got back from alone, I took lots of notes and then revised my text in many areas, and once I had a good enough manuscript, I showed it to many of the other participants from Alone Season 9 and other people that I know have a lot of knowledge in wilderness survival, and they read some of the chapters and then sent me some notes to make an improvement for the book. So that was the process of what I went through to write Thrive. Why did you not treat water despite the risk, like getting giardia? One of the reasons why I chose to drink water, and that was a plan from the start, was because I've drank water untreated for over 10 years in many different areas, sometimes very sketchy water, and honestly I don't think even one time pops out as like I got something bad in my stomach. I think my stomach is pretty tough, and I make an effort to keep it tough. So yeah, it was a risky decision, but I was comfortable taking the risks. I'm not a risk-averse person. For instance, going into alone is risky. You can cut yourself, you can be dehydrated and fall and hit a rock or anything like that. Like, there's so many things that can happen wrong out there. There are calculated risks, and I think it wasn't bad. I was not sick because of the water. This is not something I would recommend to everyone, of course. Like, each person needs to know what their abilities are and how their body reacts. But for me, it was a no-brainer. So then there's this question: how can you drink ice cold water and not have a fire? Why didn't you freeze? Drinking ice cold water is not pleasant, and it's one of these ideas where for me it's not like I got lots of benefit from drinking cold water versus warming it up. And in fact, it was a little bit harder for my stomach to get that cold water in. I couldn't drink as much as fast of cold water, but I made a rough calculation in my mind of how much that cold water actually cools you down, your body, and really it's not that much. It's not that many calories that you spend on warming that up. That water inside your body is not much. It's negligible. So it's not a big deal. It does make you feel cold, and it felt sometimes like my teeth would crack because of the cold. Maybe that was a stupid decision, but whatever, I don't care. Some people have asked about my axe, and this axe was a collaboration between Robert Weir and I. You can see it here. The thing that's special about this axe is, to me, this is the perfect year-round boreal forest survival axe. You can undo these bolts, remove the handle, put the handle back in, make a different handle. This works well for prying things. It has an edge like that. So it's good for debarking trees. And the main idea is an ice chisel. So really in the boreal forest, once the ice gets a foot or 2 feet or 3 feet thick, you basically need an ice chisel. And if you don't have an ice chisel, an axe just won't be efficient enough. You will waste so much time trying to make holes in the ice with just an axe. So Robert owns Panacea X. I'll link to his website, and he made this custom axe for me. We went back and forth with the designs, and it's really good. This is the first prototype. It needs some improvements, but yeah, I really liked it out there. It worked perfectly as an axe. Obviously, it's not the best axe out there, and it's not the best ice chisel, but it's the best combination that we could come up. A neat thing also about this axe is that you can wear it like that on your leg. It's a drop leg holster, so it's very easy to wear it and just grab it. Would you change your 10 items in hindsight? I wouldn't. I think I brought a pretty versatile set of items. Maybe for other people, I would suggest changing one of my items for a ration. But yeah, I think my 10 items that I chose are pretty versatile, and I'll leave the list with a link to the items that I brought in this video. What tools did you make out there? I made a cutting board, sharpening tool, fishing rod, a dock. Actually, the dock was, I tried to make a raft, and it was a complete failure because the wood out there, it was all balsam fir, super soft. Everything would rot very fast because of the temperature changes and the moisture there. So there weren't many appropriate logs for a raft. So that didn't work. I also made a stove with the cans that many people liked, and I made a wooden mallet to cut firewood and for just crafting.